Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are we doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. You made it all the way to Friday largely without incident, which is fantastic stuff. I'm going to say a few good mornings. Let's have a look. Who do we have here? Dan Cullen was here ahead of time, back at 9:45, but he's actually saying, let's have a look, officially at 10 o'clock. Good morning. Hope you'll be Googled. Are we all fine this Friday? Well, I'm certainly fine. Firing on all cylinders here, Dan. Thank you very much indeed. Mark Whiting's here. Jim Turner is here. Steve Williamson is here. Gary Muirhead is here. The gang is all present and correct. Steve Williamson says, 3 days of work next week. It's 2 days looking at machines with my good pal, Mr. Butler. Give him my regards, would you? Mystery machine, the Dyson DC01, my very first vacuum cleaner. It looks a bit like that, but it doesn't really. But yeah, okay. There's the first offering on our mystery machine. Speaking of which, now I've got to be honest, I was doing this while the music was playing for the intro, so I can't be absolutely sure. I haven't really checked my maths, but I think if somebody other than, well, if Steve Williamson wins today, his lead is unassailable because we're calling it a halt at the end of the month. If somebody else wins, we can possibly take it down to the wire, particularly if Dan Cullen wins today. But if he doesn't, Steve's won it, to the point where I might even get his prize out ahead of time. But I will need to check the maths first. Chris Ford is here as well. Morning, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for being here. But I'm not going to go so far as to say there is an Olympic theme, but it is the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics this evening. So our question of the day will reflect that. This Gary Muirhead saying, come on, Dan, it's like a football league. It is like a football league, although as it stands at the moment, Steve Williamson is very much in the role of Manchester City with everybody else playing second fiddle. But it is not over until the fat lady sings, and I haven't spotted her yet. So Dan, you need to have your eagle eyes on today when we get to the mystery machine. Got another extended show for you again today. We were talking yesterday about all things, about the very fact that the UK construction is the most expensive construction industry in the world. Costs more to build stuff here than it does anywhere else in the world. And I think I may know why. I'll get to that at the end of the show. Somebody has just said something in the chat. There's Dan Cullen saying, good morning, Mr. Ford, Mr. Turner, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Muirhead. Chris Ford said, mystery machine back to a 7mm square. Didn't make much difference yesterday, but I hit the post. You did hit the post, indeed. Jim Turner is already going for the JCB 4CX. It's not. Thank you, Gary says, Dan got the tablet and the phone on fire. It's all very serious, this, isn't it? We'll come to that in just a moment. So let's get the show under the way. I'm going to roll the intro like I normally do, post the question of the day, which, as I say, is Olympic themed, and we'll get the show on the road. Just going to quickly answer this question from Steve Williamson. He says, have you seen the biggest dozer in the world, the ACO Super Dozer? Not only have we seen it, it was featured on this very show a good year or so ago, complete with a tale about the fact that I don't think it ever actually turned a wheel in anger. From memory, I think it was destined to go to work in the Middle East somewhere. Something went wrong, sanctions and stuff, so it never actually turned a wheel in anger. The last I heard, it was parked under a flyover somewhere in Italy, which seems like an awful shame. But yes, we have heard of the ACO Super Dozer. I'd love to go and have a poke around that at some point. But it is Friday, the 26th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, AMI Attachments calls Tilt, the Liebherr 980 demolition excavator, which might just be my favourite machine. We're going behind the scenes at Sany, and we get into a scrap with the fine folks at Hyundai. That's Hyundai to everybody else. Plus, in our after-show news discussion, we're going to dig through the bureaucracy that is slowly burying the demolition and construction industry here in the UK. So if you are anti-red tape, anti-bureaucracy, you might enjoy that bit. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine. Just as a very quick update, let's have a look. Steve says, question of the day. No, it's nothing to do with the question of the day, that I don't think. But the just explanation. Yeah, Colonel Gaddafi ordered that super dozer, then couldn't have it because of sanctions. There you are. YouTube is lagging, apparently. Not here, it's not. No, it's looking pretty good here. We'll come back to the question of the day because I do need to show you our mystery machine for today. As I say, not thoroughly checked the maths, but I think if Steve Williamson wins today, it's game over. I think the July league table is over and done with. So somebody else needs to step up to the plate to stop that happening. Here we go. That is what you have to work with. I'm just going to take a very quick swig of tea before it goes cold. Cheers, everyone. This is another one of those machines. I'm not going to give you a clue because that would be wrong, but it is one of those machines where if you know it, you will know it in an instant. If you don't know it, you've got no chance. That's about the size of it. So anybody got any clues on what that could potentially be? Let us know in the chat. I'm just rearranging my screens. Steve says that the Acco Superdozer was for a big job in Dubai that never happened. I think, as I say, it was definitely destined for. There is a video. There's a documentary on it. There is a video on YouTube about it, and it was destined for the Middle East, and for one reason or another, it never ever happened. Chris Ford says, "I surrender." Yeah, there's plenty of time to go. I tell you what, no, I'm not going to show you any more at the moment. Let's keep it going for just a little bit longer because, as I say, today could be the decider potentially. So if Steve comes to the party and wins this one, I'll get his prize bagged up. Ken Hatter has just joined. I tell you what, Ken, as you are now here, there's the mystery machine for you to identify. If I take your comment away, you'll be able to see it slightly more clearly. That's what you've got to work with. If you've got any clues, please let us know in the chat. And while you're figuring that out, let me very quickly remind you of our question of the day. And take that away. Here's the question of the day once again. Yeah, our question of today is timely. And it is this. Given that the summer 2024 Olympics kicks off in Paris this evening, my question is simply, what is your favourite Olympic sport? Now, personally, I love the boxing. 3 rounds, non-stop, toe-to-toe. I love professional boxing, but I love amateur boxing as well. But weirdly, now I thought about it, I would say that the indoor cycling is probably my favourite. But, particularly if there's a Brit or two involved. The races always go right down to the wire, split-second decisions, really exciting spectacle. But what about you? And yes, I am expecting lots of people to vote for the women's beach volleyball. Feel free. It's predictable, but you're valid in that argument. But what is your favourite Olympic sport? Let us know in the chat. So back to the mystery machine. First guest was from Steve Williamson, who is... He's not reigning champion, but he's certainly way out in the lead. Komatsu WA 380-8 wheel loader. It is not one of those. Gary Muirhead is going for the Maruka MST. You go for the Maruka quite a bit, I've noticed. I wonder if I may just do a Maruka at some point, see if I can throw you off. Dan Culler's going for the JCB 6-ton 62. It's not one of those. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. At least we now know that whatever it is riding upon wheels. Let's have a look. So, question of the day, we've had drinking games. I think I'd be good at that. Maybe that should be a thing. Maybe when you watch the Olympics, you can have a you can have a dram for every gold medal the Brits win. And I don't know what our prospects are this time. So you'll either end up stone cold sober or under the table. Not entirely sure which way it's going to go this time around. Steve Williamson says, never really been interested. The weird thing is, Olympics are athletics and all that sort of thing. If there's athletics on, on a non-Olympic year, I wouldn't even think of putting it on the telly. Come Olympics time, glued to it. I'll watch the gymnastics. I'll even watch the dressage, the horse dancing. I'll even suffer through that. Ken Hatcher is having no part of it. He wants nothing to do with sport whatsoever. So no clues as yet on the Mystery Machine. So while you're still thinking about it, I'm going to get the show underway with a bit of this. My mouse has just gone weird. Hang on, bear with. Go down, damn you. There we go. So even though they're based in North America, we do have a bit of a passion for AMI attachments here on this show, particularly as they are going to be at the Mine Expo show, and I'll be there. They'll be in Vegas. I'll be in Vegas. Hopefully our paths will cross. Be lovely to meet up with the guys over at AMI Attachments because I'm a big fan of their work. And speaking of their work, this is their latest.
Versatility has always been the benchmark of tilt buckets. Now, AMI Attachments is setting a new standard by adding durability like never before. Introducing AMI Attachments Axis Tilt Bucket, powered by RamCam. The first fully enclosed hydraulic tilt bucket. Battling the elements of mud, rocks, and frozen dirt buildup has always been a challenge for hydraulic cylinders, especially on tilt buckets. With the new AMI Attachments Axis Tilt Bucket powered by RamCam, the hydraulic cylinders are now fully protected and hydraulic hoses have minimal exposure, reducing the risk of damage and downtime. Designed by the engineers at AMI Attachments, RamCam is a revolutionary new drivetrain that allows for mechanical rotation using hydraulic cylinders within a protective casing. By creating a camshaft-style center pin with lobes connected to the hydraulic cylinders, the bucket now pivots while protecting its components. This simple but powerful idea has forever changed the expectations for tilt bucket operators everywhere. No more broken cylinders from rocks getting caught. Material buildup no longer interferes with the tilt range. And frozen dirt stays away from the bucket's mechanics. With all the grease points now protected, the new tilt bucket powered by RamCam features a grease bank for simple and routine maintenance. The Axis Tilt Bucket powered by RamCam provides all the advantages you expect in a tilting bucket, including 90-degree tilt, only now cleaner, sleeker, and ready for any conditions. Along with a replaceable bolt-on cutting edge, the bucket design includes tapered sidewalls, reducing friction between material and bucket when unloading. The heel profile also incorporates a dual radius contour, minimizing surface contact while curling. Available for excavators from 13 to 50 ton, the Axis Tilt Bucket powered by RamCam is ideal for almost any application and machine. Built using Hardock's wear plate, the AMI Attachments Axis Tilt Bucket is made to last, even in tough, rocky terrain, and is backed by AMI's 2-year limited warranty. Contact AMI Attachments to learn more about the industry's first tilt bucket that's got every angle covered. The all-new Axis Tilt Bucket, powered by RamCam.
I think I'd like to be powered by RamCam. As it stands at the moment, I'm powered by PG Tips. But bit of love for that. Ken Hatcher says, wow, that looks good. And Gary Muirhead picking up on precisely the bit that they wanted you to pick up on. Good to see the Rams protected. Clever idea. Totally agree. Yeah, I thought that looked very smart indeed. Not sure if it will ever make its way to the UK. Who the hell knows? I shall speak to them when I see them and tell them that there are certain people in the UK that love the AMI products. So let's go back to the mystery machine because we've had a couple of guesses. Chris Ford is going for a Nissan Hannix N350. It's not one of those. Gary Muirhead is going for the Mechalac TA6 S swivel dumper. It's not one of those. So I best show you a little bit more. Let's take Gary off the screen and show you a smidgen more. A piece of cab. I know what the machine is, obviously, but I couldn't identify it from that. But somebody might be able to. Going back to the AMI attachments, Steve Williamson says, "Love them thumb grabs." I think UK was. I think you're probably in a minority on that. Let's have a look. Jim Turner is going for the Kramer. It's not one of those. As I say, it is one of those machines. If you know it, you'll know it in an instant when I show you maybe a bit of body or something like that. So keep the guesses coming in. Let me take that away for a moment because weird things are happening on my screen at the moment. All of a sudden there was nobody watching, and then all of a sudden there was loads of people watching. Don't know what's going on with that. We'll be right back after a smidgen of this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
I'm not supposed to have favourites. I'm supposed to be an independent, objective journalist. So I'm not supposed to favour any particular machine. But if I were to have it off on the lottery and I was told I needed to buy a machine, I'm fairly sure it'd be one of these. Yeah, that's the Liebherr 980 demolition rig. All I would say is it looks way better in red. Even though we were talking about the fact that Liebherr looked better in white, that in red, fantastic stuff. Garvin over on Mostly Diggers. Talk about the 980. Love to have that in the back garden just to rob my neighbour's apples. Some childhood revenge. It's quite a big way of doing apples, I have to say. Ken Hatcher saying, nice to see the sprockets in the correct place, and Jim Turner enjoying the music. My choice, that music. Just go back to the Acco Superdozer. Apparently it's on Jim Turner's shopping list. When, not if, when he wins big. Now I can tell you, it's all over. It's all over. The mystery machine has been solved, and it's been solved by, well, it's been solved. It's been solved by the person that is fast becoming the supreme champion of this, Mr. Steve Williamson. I can tell you, we had that from Dan Cullen, the Hydreamer 915. You were on the right path. Steve then had a stab with the Divino 12-ton multi-view dumper, which I would not have accepted. Gary Muirhead piped up with the Hydreamer NBC 800. But then in comes Steve Williamson with the Divino 120 TW swivel tip dumper. You won't be able to see it, but that is precisely what is written on my piece of paper there. It is the Divino 120 TW. Let me take Steve away for a second and I'll show you exactly what it was. There you are. the 120 TW from Divino. Not Davina McCall, Divino. Pretty sure they're Italian. They certainly sound it. So that's it, Steve. I think, as I say, I will need to check the maths, but I'm fairly sure he has just basically won the league for July. Obviously, we'll keep playing. There's no need to call it a day. I'll check the maths. I'll come back to you on Monday and let you know if that is actually the case. And there is, as Steve saying, saw them at ConExpo. Lovely looking dumpers. Yeah, they do make some very, very smart looking machines. I actually saw them, I think, first time at a plant works. Dan Cullen says never seen them. Yeah, they were definitely at Plantworks, not the last one, but possibly the one before that, or the one where there was a load of rain. I know that doesn't narrow it down because I think the first three Plantworks were under a deluge, but they've certainly been here in the UK. They're available here in the UK, or they certainly were. But Steve has correctly identified them, so it's another 3 points to Steve, which I think takes him to 27 points or thereabouts, which I think is pretty much unassailable at this point. But I will confirm that on Monday. While Steve continues to bask in his glory, let me play you this. Love this from Chris Ford, who says, is it a Thwaites 9-ton? Too late. Yeah, too late. And it was wrong anyway. So, yeah, but well done, Chris. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's have a look. Steve says, I'll not play the next one, so it mixes it up a bit. Don't want to win again. Just joking, guys. You've got to, listen, you've got to defend your title. That's all part of the game, I think. I've just got to come up with another prize and keep coming up with mystery machines for you to identify. Time to relax a little bit. Got three and a bit minutes of a look around a Sany, a number of Sany factories. Can't help think, whenever you look around these Chinese factories, just the sheer scale of them. And I realise they've been riding high on a very, very buoyant domestic market over the past few years. But the size and scale and complexity of these Chinese factories just blows my tiny mind. Take a look at this. Something else, right? Apparently, we're having trouble on Instagram. My apologies if you're watching on Instagram. I don't know quite what went wrong there, but apparently we are having issues. Let me go away from that. Jim Turner enjoying the waltz, apparently listening, not dancing. Steve Williamson comments, you don't see many Mechalac machines at Intermat, don't you think, considering they're French made? All true, very true, and I don't remember seeing Mechalac at all. All I would say is that Mechalac actually hosted a series of roadshow events across Europe. Don't know if they came to the UK, but they certainly did host. So maybe they've made the decision of trying to, a bit like Bobcat and Volvo have done with their dedicated days, rather than actually being part of an exhibition or something like that. They've decided to go and do their own thing. Dan Cullen saying that's some factory. I think one of the things I found as an eye-opener, I mean, my first exposure to Sany was very much in the field of excavators. Didn't realise they did trucks, didn't realise they did cranes, certainly didn't realise up until Hillhead this year that they were doing road machinery as well. So, yeah, amazing stuff. Steve says, Sany really are bigger than you think. Yeah, absolutely. We get them in the UK, and I'm not sure if he's talking about Sany here or Mechalac again. We get them in the UK and think, what the hell is this shit? Then you venture out and in the world, and they're massive. They absolutely are massive. Steve, thoroughly enjoyed that cracking video. I can't see how likes of these brands, not more in the UK, more companies using them. Sany are starting to make, well, I mean, they're obviously here. Sany UK is in existence. They were very much in evidence. Quite a big stand, actually, at Hillhead. They're very, very much making inroads. Fits and starts, but I think going back to my my comment about industrial racism, which was just a term that I coined. I do think that in years to come, when we look back at the this period of development in the industry, I think we will look back and think, well, A, the Chinese weren't so bad after all, but B, Lugong paved the way. We'd had Chinese machines, but Lugong really did set up shop here, really made some inroads, and almost, I think, made Chinese equipment acceptable. And I think Sunward and Sany are certainly riding on the back of that. Gary Muirhead says that's some setup and not some Backstreet Alley in China throwing them together. Again, I mean, you think, I don't know how long Sany has been in existence, but probably, my guess off the top of my head would say probably less than 30 years. They're already top 10, I think, in world construction equipment manufacturers, and are making huge inroads around the world, and you can see exactly why. Let's have a look. Sany are creeping up here, but heard from people they're going elsewhere due to lack of backup here. Again, that is probably the easiest bit to fix. Put yourself a parts depot somewhere in Europe. For some reason, I don't know why, but Tessenderlo over in sort of the Belgian-Dutch border seems to be a bit of a favourite. Both Hyundai and Sunward have got their parts and spares part there. Let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says, my good friend left the big brand of Liebherr in Scotland to join Sany UK to become head of sales for the UK. I mean, obviously, big offer for a job, head of sales and what have you. But if you're leaving Liebherr, which, let's be absolutely honest, Liebherr is absolute Premier League. If you're leaving them, and I'm sure the pay packet probably helped, but if you're leaving Liebherr to join Sany, you must have liked what you saw at Sany. Jim Turner says, I fancy a shift on one of their 13 to 16 ton machines. We had the 4 to 6 ton middies here a few years ago. Wasn't too impressed, but I dare say they've come on a bit. That's one of the things that I find most remarkable. I first saw, this is not Sany, this is Sunward. I first saw my first Sunward machine probably slightly pre-COVID, so maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and thought, fast forward to the last plant works, and my had become, oh. You see, that's why I'm a journalist. My mastery of the English language, as opposed to, oh. But no, they really had come on. And I have to say, maybe it's because they've got almost endless cash. A lot of them are state-owned and state-backed and everything else. But the speed of development that's taking place with Chinese equipment seems to be greater than the speed of development with other European brands. Maybe it's because they've got a lot of catching up to do. Maybe it's down to that. Maybe it's down to the cash, but they do. You literally saw Sunward at one exhibition and thought, yeah. Saw them another 3 or 4 years later and thought, oh, now we're talking. That's 3 or 4 years. Hoping to put a Lugong through its paces soon to air my opinion. Look forward to hearing that. The Chinese seem to learn quick, get on track very quickly. They do indeed. Ruth Anthony, drinking games with Mark. One for me, one for me, one for me, one for me. Barely can see a Mark sitting there drinking water. Would be good to video. Yeah, I think that'd be a fantastic idea. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? I'll do drinking games that only involve me drinking water. I might even push the boat out and go for a Diet Coke. Should we get on to the final film of the day? I think we probably should. So let me take that away and prepare people for a scrap.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
In a few minutes' time, I'm going to go full rant mode on things like red tape and bureaucracy. So while I'm warming up, while I'm girding my loins for that, take a look at this.
I mean, you could pick a bolt off the floor with it. You know, it's precise enough to do that. I mean, I've done that before. You know, they've stood a bolt up in the middle of the yard and I've been able to pick it up. Yeah, it's very, very, very precise. My name's Jamie Davis. I'm the Managing Director at Davis Salvage. We work in vehicle recycling. We collect end-of-life vehicles throughout Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire, and we're currently processing between 110 and 120 vehicles per week. The vehicles are depolluted initially, and then any valuable components that we can resell are removed, and then they're put here, and then we're dismantling them with the Hyundai Excavator. We've got the Hyundai HX235A fitted with the power hand attachments. Controllability and precision is very, I mean, we could pull even like a single strand of wire from behind the dashboard with it, you know, without much difficulty. It's fitted with the Tier 5 engine. Obviously the fuel efficiency and emissions, you know, is a lot better than previous machines. Emissions being important to us, being in this kind of industry, you know, we're looking after the environment, so noise, obviously a lot better than previous models. The comfort's great, the air conditioning is good, it's got a heated seat. When you have the doors shut, the noise inside the cab is at a real minimum, so you can hear, you know, on-site radios, so you know what's going on, where people are, which is obviously important from a safety point of view. Running quite a small yard, and we've got it, you know, kind of penned in with Lego blocks. It doesn't give you any room at all, so zero tailspin was very important, especially with people around, anything like that. You know, it's a good safety option. We specifically asked for the rubber tracks because we wanted to preserve the concrete in our yard, and when we're loading vehicles with the scrap that we've processed, it's important when we're trying to kind of press it in that we're not shoving ourselves to one side. You know, the extra grip's very important. It's fine, there's not all that much to do. Check tightness bolts, grease it daily, wash it weekly. We've only just had the first service, but we were within about 10 hours of needing it when we realised, and they came out very quickly and got it done within this kind of time scale. Taylor Braithwaite, from the word go, was very good. They kept us up to date every couple of days with where the machine was. This latest A-Series machine for us so far has been perfect. Fuel efficiency up massively on the one we've had before. Comfort, precision on the controls, reliability, all absolutely 100% so far.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
So, Steve Williamson says, I follow a guy on TikTok that does live videos of this. You end up glued watching it. I don't do TikTok at all, but I have to admit, some of the stuff that I can watch for hours on Instagram, you'd think, first glance, this seems quite dull. And yet, no, not at all. Power Hand, a great Scottish product made right here in God's country, says Gary Muirhead. Indeed. Nice kit, pity it's a Hyundai. I feel that Kabelka was a better machine for that job. Not according to that guy, apparently. As I say, I do have a rant coming up, so I'm going to do the usual thing. I am going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around, then please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. Obviously, no show tomorrow, but I will be back on Monday. So have a good day, have a good weekend if you can't stick around. But I do want to talk about all things bureaucratic and red tape after this. So I'll quickly go through the chat in just a moment after we've heard from MB Crusher, and then we'll get on with the other bit of the show. The bit that seems to go on for the longest for some reason. So let's get this bit out of the way. I will go back to the beginning in just a moment, but Steve just said this. You not think you'll start watching construction videos on social media, an hour later you're watching videos of the most stupid shit you've ever seen in your life? Yeah, and what surprises me is I used to do it, I think, more with YouTube, where you go down like a rabbit hole. So one of the big rabbit holes for me is, music from the 80s. I'll play one song that leads to another song that leads to another song. And as you say, an hour and a half goes by and you're still doing it. But Instagram Reels, exactly the same. I will happily just sit there and then you'll find somebody that you take a shine to, and before you know it, you've consumed an hour of whatever they've been putting out over the past year. So good morning, everyone. I will get to the ranty bit in a minute. Morning, Mark and team at Demolition Towers. How are we all this fine morning? All firing on all cylinders. Have to say, looking forward to the Olympics. Obviously enjoyed the Euros enormously, and I do like me a bit of TV sport, mainly because it allows me to put something other than Prisoner Cell Block H on the telly. Don't even ask. So yes, looking forward to that. At 7 o'clock this evening, I shall be sat down glued to see exactly what the French do with their opening ceremony. They'll have to go a very, very long way to beat the London 2012 opening ceremony, complete with the Queen and James Bond, and a bit of David Beckham, some Spice Girls, a bit of Frank Turner. Who else was there? Mr. Bean. Oh yeah, fantastic stuff. Can't imagine the French managing to top that, but hey, who knows? Few quick good mornings. There's Mark Whiting, there's Jim Turner, there's Steve Williamson, Gary Muirhead. All of the gang are here. Mystery Machine went once again to our friend Steve Williamson, who correctly identified that it was that. It was the Davino 120 TW. As I say, got to check the maths, but I think he may already be partially crowned. He is the July champion in waiting, is where we are at the moment. Have you seen the Acco Superdozer? Yes, we have. We have featured it on this show. Do wish somebody would do something more with it, not just with the machine, but the documentary that I saw on it was all right. Looked like he'd been shot on a potato, and the voiceover wasn't the best. So if anybody, if the person that owns the Acco Superdozer is watching, give my son Fred a call, would you? Get him over to Italy, go and film it, do the job properly, just before it is a complete rusting hulk. What else have we got here? Surprisingly little feedback on the question of the day today. Looks like, and I realise that not many of you are football-y type people, but not many people are into sport, full stop, it would appear, unless I've completely misjudged you and have missed a few comments. Don't know. Let me rattle through here. This is an interesting point. Obviously, Steve's very good at the old Mystery Machine game. Sorry, I thought the music had stopped. It's amazing what you remember, what you see at shows. It's amazing what you remember, full stop. It really is. The number of times I can just pluck a fact or an expression or a song lyric or a quote just completely out of thin air. And the older I get, maybe I'm more conscious of it now because I am getting older, and obviously one of the first signs of advanced years is the fact that you do start to forget stuff. I've got none of that at the moment. Touch wood. Just an endless. My brain is an endless source of useless crap. It really is. Tune. I like a waltz. That was a Sany video. Yeah, I don't know. Was that a who were the waltz people? See, shows how little I know about Strauss. Was that a Strauss? There you are. Told you I could remember stuff. Was that a Strauss? Whoops, I don't know. I don't know enough. And unfortunately, I don't think Fred was listening. He'd know, because he knows stuff like that. Go right the way down here. There you are. Now, that's true, Steve. I remember a lot of the kit I saw at Hillhead 2 years ago and at Plantworks. You really do. You can do a full program about it once I've bought it and shipped it over. I will do that. I will do precisely that. Dan Cullen says, my sport is rugby. Don't even understand the rules. Gary says, I see you got Man United in the first game of the season. See, there was a time I'd have looked at that and go, oh, Jesus. Man United these days, I mean, I'll regret saying this, but Man United these days, that's a potential 3 points. Don't see them as a team to fear anymore at all. Let's have a look. The 2024 Paris Olympics officially begins today with world leaders arriving in the French capital, but the country's rail network has been disrupted by arson attacks. The opening ceremony will see boats carry athletes and dignitaries down a section of the River Seine. Yes, there's a film. This is probably just me. Anybody else like, those really sort of cheap and nasty B movies? I like those. I do like me I love me a blockbuster, but I'm just going to answer this for Jim. I tell you what, Jim, I'll go one better than telling you what it is. I'll put it in the chat for you. The question of the day is, what is your favourite Olympic sport? But it's right there in the chat. Yeah, there's a movie doing the rounds. I think it's on Netflix. And I think it's called Below Paris or Under Paris. And cut a long story short, there are sharks. There are sharks under the city of Paris, living in the catacombs. And lo and behold, they are holding the swimming events for the Paris 2024 Olympics in the river. I'll leave you to fill in the blanks. But there's a lot of sharks, and somehow it does get a bit absurd at times. Somehow the sharks managed to blow up several bridges. See, this is how the audience is divided. Dan Cullen says, seen it. It's a good film. Yeah, sort of. I mean, I watched it to the very end. So, Steve Williamson says, I saw the trailer. No thanks. Cheese. Yes, it is made entirely from Brie. It is made entirely from Brie, but it was good fun. Dan Cullen says, you missed a few of my comments. Did I? My sport is rugby. Seen that? Oh, hang on a minute. I've just seen something about valuation. Hang on a minute. Where are we? Hang on a minute. I've kind of lost the thread here a bit. I'm sure we aired that one. I can't see how the likes of these brands are not more in the UK. More companies using them. It's also down to asset valuation, I think, he says. That's the problem with companies here. They buy the higher valuation for assets valuation. Possibly. Yeah, possibly. And it's not just assets valuation, is it? It's resale value as well. If you're buying yourself a Cat or a Komatsu, a Hitachi or a Liebherr or a Volvo, you've got a pretty good handle on exactly what your likely resale value would be. If you buy yourself a Sany, which, let's face it, are still finding their feet here in the UK, you probably don't. You probably don't know what the resale value is. That being said, Lugong have overcome that. The number of people that have been in for one Lugong and have gone back for several more, one can only assume. I mean, they've been here for plenty long enough. I would imagine a fair few have gone for resale by now. So they must be achieving some sort of value, mustn't they? That would be my take. Right, it is almost that time. Let me get rid of that. Turn the music off. And I have a thing to do, don't I? You can tell this is a new section. Chris Ford says, question of the day, badminton. As an ex-competitive player, you used to play badminton, did you? The split-second timing and the power the players put into the game leaves me breathless. Yeah. And the mystery machine, says Dan Cullen. Did I miss your entry in the mystery machine? I don't think it would have made any difference if I'm being completely honest. But I will go back just to be absolutely sure that we got the right winner. I'm just rattling through here. I can see that one from Dan. I can see that one from Dan, but ultimately it came down to that one from Steve. So, yeah, okay. So it is time for that other bit of the show. You know, that bit that I thought we'd do it as a suck it and see, and suddenly is taking over the show. So let's have a bit of this first. Okay, if you were here for yesterday's news discussion, you'll know that we spent some considerable time talking about the fact that the UK is the most expensive place in the world in which to build anything. Well, I wasn't entirely satisfied with that. So yesterday afternoon and a bit of last night, I set out to find precisely why. As is often the case these days, I called upon the assistance of my AI sidekick, Bruce, to help me look into the problem. To the uninitiated, the process of building a house, an office block, or anything else is simply a matter of getting yourself some land, digging some foundations, and away you go. In reality, and in the UK in particular, that is the easy part that comes at the end of a very long and very tortuous journey. In fact, having delved into this a little bit more, it strikes me that the UK construction industry likes bureaucracy almost as much as it enjoys building stuff. Now, I'll tell you right now, I was aware of the red tape with which the sector is being suffocated. But it was only when I saw it laid out end to end in black and white that I began to understand just the sheer depth of our obsession with bureaucracy. So, if you will allow me, I'm going to take you through the deluge of rules and regulations. These are the hurdles that demolition and construction companies must navigate in order to do anything. Okay? They must obtain timely planning permission from local authorities, ensure compliance with building regulations and codes, which may vary by region, navigate heritage and conservation area restrictions, adhere to the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Construction Design and Management Regulations, or CDM, manage risk assessments, safety plans, and worker safety training, handle inspections and audits by the Health and Safety Executive, comply with environmental impact assessments and sustainability standards, adhere to regulations on waste management, recycling and emissions, address concerns related to protected species and habitats, obtain necessary licenses for specialised work, ensure all workers hold relevant qualifications and certifications, manage VAT, corporation tax and other financial obligations, navigate grants, subsidies and funding opportunities, ensure compliance with financial reporting standards and audits, adhere to employment laws regarding worker rights and wages and working conditions, manage subcontractor agreements and ensure compliance, understand and negotiate contract terms, manage contractual disputes and claims effectively, navigate public sector procurement rules and tendering processes, ensure fair competition and transparency in supplier selection, manage procurement fraud risks, secure adequate insurance coverage for public liability, employers' liability and professional indemnity, manage claims and ensure compliance with insurance policy terms, understand liability issues related to defects and delays, comply with the General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR in handling personal data, ensure robust cybersecurity measures to protect sensitive information, manage data breaches and reporting obligations, address community concerns and objections to construction projects, engage with stakeholders to ensure transparency and cooperation, navigate public consultations and feedback processes. Quite a list, right? And it doesn't even include things like pre-qualification questionnaires and the management of training matrices for every single employee. You will note that that list, extensive though it was, didn't contain a single reference to anybody actually demolishing or building anything. There is not a single mention of digging a hole, laying a brick, erecting a facade, or demolishing one either. Apparently, the actual process of building or demolishing anything is now just a sideshow. The main event is the red tape that we seem to love so much. Now, 2 points on that. The first is this. Every time a rule has to be followed, a box has to be ticked or a compliance proved, that carries a cost. Someone, somewhere will need to action something, and they will need to be paid. So demolition and construction companies must now employ people purely to ensure that the relevant boxes are ticked. That ultimately adds to the overall cost of any project. However, it's the second point of this that really gets me. So many of the elements contained in that list of bureaucratic spaghetti is either stuff we've brought upon ourselves or that we've allowed to be imposed upon us. We spoke yesterday about training, about how it had become bloated whilst not actually delivering the required level of competency within the workforce. Yet there are demolition and construction companies with individuals or even entire departments dedicated to ensuring that their staff each carries the right coloured card. There are demolition and construction companies employing individuals or entire departments to oversee claims, disputes, mediation, and arbitration. Surely it would be cheaper and more efficient to have more robust contracts, and then a system to ensure that everybody just abides by those contracts. And how much does all this cost? How many people are employed within the industry merely to tick boxes and to shuffle papers? And how big a proportion of the construction pie do these people make up? Are we now at the point where we've got more people in the office following rules and regulations than we've actually got out on site? Just one final thing to bear in mind before I throw this open. This huge pile of red tape is after several consecutive government initiatives rather, to reduce the administrative burden on companies and organisations. Several of the recent Tory party governments have actually made it a point. We are going to reduce bureaucracy and red tape. I don't know how many points there were in that, but I think it was something like 40 or 50. That's after it's been reduced. How does that all affect the makeup of a construction company? Have we reached the point now where construction firms employ more people doing non-construction tasks than it actually employs building stuff? If that's the case, we've taken a wrong turn somewhere, haven't we? Now, I'm going to go over to the chat. After I've ranted, what do we got here? No wonder the planning process takes so long to be completed with all the red tape. Shocking. Just sounds like one big money-making scheme. And the other thing that didn't mention is the way in which we have layers upon layers upon layers of roles and responsibilities within the industry. So if you start from the top, you've got a developer or a main contractor who's going to build an office block or some houses or whatever it might be. They then take on a main contractor who will then outsource the digging of the foundations, the laying of the road, the construction of the house, the plastering of the house, the painting of the house, and all of these sort of things. Now, taken at face value, if you're using specialist labor to do specialist jobs, that seems to make perfect sense. But you know full well that if the let's take the person laying the path to the new house that you've just built. Let's say they are billing the main contractor £1,000 to do that, £1,000 per house. That main contractor will put a markup on that, so that by the time it gets to the developer at the top, that £1,000 per path might be £1,500 per path. It might be £2,000 per path. And if you think about all of the roles within these projects, from demolition to clear the way, to piling, steel erection, bricklaying, all of dozens and dozens and dozens of different disciplines, all feeding back into this. And each of those specialist companies will need to make a profit, rightly so. But then they are billing somebody above them who also need to make a profit, but who also want to cover their arse in terms of payment. So not only are they making a profit on their own work, but they're making a profit on everybody below them. And then that is passed up to here, which is the developer, who is also out to make a profit. So by the time that you as a private individual buy that house, we said it yesterday, the house, to build a house, Jim Turner reckons he can build one for 20 grand. He's doing it on his own land. So let's take it as a commercial thing. I think Chris Ford actually said the price of to build a house these days is about 75,000 quid. Well, is it 75,000 quid, or is it more like 30 and there's just a huge amount of profit? But when you actually see the amount of bureaucracy, red tape, and little snippets of profit here and there. By the time it comes to market, it's no great wonder that 75 grand house is now 250,000 quid, because everybody's taking a little piece of it. And I understand that. We live in a commercial world. I understand how capitalism works. And frankly, I rely upon demolition construction companies to pay my wages, so more power to them. Where I have the issue is with the bureaucracy of these things. We have literally entire departments within. I know demolition better than I know construction, but we have entire departments. We have legal departments, and all they are required to do is to make sure that the demolition company or the construction company is legally compliant. We have people that are in charge of training, and if you think about yourselves, somebody like a Ken Hatter or a Gary Muirhead or a Steve Williamson probably hold multiple cards. And the chances are they didn't get all of those cards at the same time, and they have different levels of qualification. So somebody somewhere in an office now has to sit there and think, okay, well, Steve's got his excavator card. That's going to last him another 3 years, but we do need to update his dumper card within the next 6 months. Now you write that across a company that employs 20, 30, 50 people. That is a full-time job for somebody, a full-time job that we've invited upon ourselves. And it wouldn't be so bad if we were sat here saying the training system is it is something to be proud of. We are a world leader. Look how good we are at training. Look how safe our sites are. Look how competent our workforces are. But that's not the case. It's not the case at all. Steve Williamson says, if you watch Grand Designs, this explains this in nearly every episode. They always have a budget of, say, £200,000. That at the end they win so much, they're in so much debt because they had to borrow or loan because it costs more than double. And there's another thing. I mean, there was a big bit in that list of bureaucracy that I read to you about arbitration and mediation and what have you. You could do away with that. And bearing in mind, the very notion of a contract is that a contract is supposed to be legally binding. So if you are a house builder, let's just, there's a plot of land somewhere and somebody has got a plot of land and it's big enough to take one house. And the house builder, let's say you're a private individual, you've sold that land or you're letting that land to a house builder. How much is it going to cost me to build a house on that? It's going to be 75,000 quid. Okay, can we have that in writing? You certainly can. Here's a piece of paper, 75,000 quid. How long is it going to take? It will take us 2 months to build it. Okay, 2 months, £75,000. Anything else we need to know? No. Okay, at the end of the 2 months, they've handed it over. They've done the snagging. You've been round. You're happy that it's going to be a decent house, that it's not falling down. There's no subsidence. They've clearly abided by the building regs and everything else. And they then tell you, actually, we want £150,000. No, I've got a contract here. I've got a contract here that says £75,000 on your bike, pal. What? How are we doing this? Which brings up the subject of retentions. We all know what retentions are. We're all grown-ups here. But they apply retentions to demolition. Okay, now the basic idea of retentions is to ensure, but bearing in mind the layers upon layers upon layers. But the basic idea of retentions was you would withhold some money from a contract so that basically you would withhold part of the payment until you were completely happy with what had been delivered. So if you're building a bunch of houses, somebody will go around after all of the houses have been built, look them over, do they comply, are they all painted, are they all plastered to the standard we would expect, have we signed off with NHBC standards and all of the building regs and everything else. Assuming that's the case, here's the remainder of the money. But they apply that to demolition. Here's how demolition works. Here's a tower block, and I am going to pay you to take that away. Make that tower block go away. Okay? You come back 3 months later, and there's a flat piece of earth, and that tower block is gone. And there's a retention on that. Are they expecting it to resprout? Has anybody ever seen a tower block rise again? It's been demolished, but suddenly, something like out of the Terminator 2 film, there's a little bubbling of mercury on the floor, or all of a sudden it begins. That's never happened. So why the fuck are you hanging on to my money? I've demolished the building as we agreed. Why are you hanging on to my money? And let's be absolutely honest here, it is as a demolition contractor, it is my money, not your money, not the money of a mediation company, not the money of an arbitration company, not the money of a legal department or a legal firm. It is my money. Chris Ford says, I'm up to 130k, still not finished. I estimate about 150-ish by the time I've done. Hopefully, he says. This is why I can't understand housing developers. Why don't they buy up or start up groundworks companies? The groundworks companies make a fortune out of them. Bizarrely, when you think back, and I probably caught the very tail end of this, but back in the day, that's exactly what they did. When I did, I'm struggling to remember the name of the company. It'll come to me. But I'm in Epsom, and about, I don't know, 5 miles down the way is Mitcham, and Mitcham is the traditional home of Waits, the big house builder. And back in the day, Waits used to have ground workers. They had their own plant fleet, to the point where at one point they farmed it out to, I think it was called Vine Plant. So their plant fleet had become so big that they were actually hiring it out to other people, and it was still owned, but it was kind of floated off to one side, and they could use their own plant. They owned it, so they could charge what they liked, but they would also hire it out to other people. That's how it used to be. That's exactly how it used to be. You think back to the days of the construction of the M1, even things like the M40. Some of the companies that were involved in that had their own plant, had their own crews to actually do that work. And I understand this idea of taking people off the books so that you can probably ride the rises and falls of demand and fluctuations in the market. If you've not got anybody in your books, you don't have to worry about redundancies and stuff like that. You pick people up and you put them down. Now, as a working person, and bearing in mind a lot of you guys are those very people that can be picked up and put down, that doesn't sit particularly well with me. But I can understand the logic behind it. But as Jim has just pointed out, if they had... groundworks companies are making a fortune out of house builders and everybody else. Is anybody looking at this? Is anybody analysing? Is it as clear as this? Let's say you're a house builder and you've got 12 houses to build. You've got your plot of land. You build your 12 houses. You sell the houses, and that the difference between your construction cost and the sale price is your profit, more or less. But is anybody actually looking at the makeup of that cost? We've already been through the bureaucratic and administrative cost, but is anybody looking at that and thinking, we're spending an absolute shit ton of money here on groundworks, or we're spending a shit ton of money here on plasterers? Would it not be better off to have a team of ground workers or a team of plasterers, or possibly both, and do this in-house? Is anybody looking at that? We need more big companies like a Wimpy that could do everything in-house, all the trades. Yeah, as I say, it makes me wonder. It does make me wonder about the way that we've gone. And I mentioned this a couple of days ago. As part of the government shake-up, and I wish I could remember what the initiative was called, but the new Labour government is looking to crack down on employment and basically giving more rights to employees. My guess is that will make demolition and construction companies push even more people off their books, because if they've suddenly got rights like increased maternity and paternity rights, no 0-hour contracts and all those kind of things. My feeling is that will encourage some companies to say, we can't be exposed to that. Bearing in mind the very, very thin margins that some construction and demolition companies work to, we can't be exposed to that level. So we're going to have to trim our employed workforce, and we will just have to bring them in through agencies or individual hire on a contractual basis. And yet that seems, based on all that we're saying here, that seems to fly in the face of what we as an industry we actually should be doing. We should be employing more directly. And again, thinking about that out loud, and going back to the mediation and the arbitration, if you are a house builder, I keep coming back to a house builder, but if you're a house builder and you've built a bunch of houses in Epsom, just up the road from me, you built 12 new houses. It probably made sense for you to tender for the plastering and the painting and decorating locally. So you've had a company who you may have never dealt with before. They've ticked all the boxes. They've got their compliance forms and everything else, but you've never met them, don't know them from Adam, and they've gone in and they've done a less than perfect job. So you've probably chosen the cheapest option, but you are now in a situation where you are going to have to go through arbitration, either to get them to go back to rectify the shoddy job they've done, or to recoup some of the money that you've spent. Would it not be easier and cheaper to actually have those people on your books? Because ultimately you can then guarantee the quality that you would expect. It's only when you think about how modular houses are now, one of the reasons they're modular, apart from the fact that they're very, very easy to build, is because each one is of a guaranteed outcome. We're going to build a 4-bedroom house, so we need this flat pack. It will be erected there. It will stand on this plinth and the foundation, and it will be to this specification. And we know that because we've done it 100 times before, 1,000, 10,000 times before. Why are we not taking that attitude with painters, decorators, plasterers, landscape gardeners, ground workers, and everything else? Jim Turner says because of the retention money, could be because of the below ground remediation work. If you are involved in below ground remediation work, but and this is often the case, and listen, I can promise you this is absolutely the case. There are companies, and I can think of one literally off the top of my head, who had, here is a tower block. I think it was like 8 stories or something like that. We want that brought back down to base. They did. Retention for months. There was no below ground. It was just bring it down to slab and then bugger off. We'll take care of the rest. So how we got retentions? Mick Norton's just joined us. Morning, Mick. Jim Turner says years ago, smaller firms built houses. They were local builders. They usually had a plant hire firm and a builder's merchants too. They did the whole thing from a site strip to the finished housing estate. Was it better? Was there less red tape? Was there less bureaucracy? Were the houses better? It'd be interesting to know. Dan Cullen says, so true. Dan Cullen says, JRL do everything from demo to plant ground workers to crane and concrete, all in-house. They are massive, he says. Steve Williamson says, when I was an apprentice brickie, we did machine work, bricky work, joiner work, drainage work, painting, slabbing, did everything. Was a good way to know what path to take in life, having done more than just bricklaying. There's another point. If you are an operative, and I mean operative or operator, so you might be driving a broom, you might be driving a machine, you might be handling a shovel or whatever it might be. But if you're working within construction, as it stands today, construction or demolition, as it stands today, because you are working in a very specific role, you're not exposed necessarily to all the other bits and pieces. If you were talking about the company here that Steve's talking about, if you joined that company as an apprentice brickie, you might be stood there and thinking, actually, that concrete work looks like something I could get behind, or driving a digger, or drainage, that looks kind of sexy. That floats my boat. I'd like to have a go at that. That's not how it works anymore. If you are an apprentice brickie and you want to try your hand at drainage, you're changing companies now, because there are drainage companies and there are brick building or bricklaying companies, and never the twain shall meet. Is that another cause of our ongoing skill shortage? Love to hear from you. Dan Cullen, but all self-employed guys. So just going back to this is JRL, do everything from demo to plant ground workers to crane and concrete, all in-house, but they're all self-employed guys. Is that right? I'll ask the question. If you are a self-employed person, how far does that self-employment go? Do you get paid sick leave? Do you get paid holiday time? Is the cost of your PPE covered? Are you insured through your company, or are you insured yourself? And the one that really gets me is if you are self-employed, but you are working 99.9% of the time with the same company, who bears the cost of your training? Is it them? Are they paying for your training to be kept up to speed, or is it you? And that is, again, I mean, I think that's one of the major issues with our discussions about grandfather rights or the abolition thereof. If you are working with a company that takes care of your training and your training costs, frankly, whether your grandfather rights have buggered off or not doesn't really matter. If you've got to go and take a week out of your paid week to go and sit an MVQ to prove that you could do precisely what you've been doing for the last 20 or 30 years, no skin off your nose because somebody else is footing the bill. Where it does make a difference is if you're a private individual. We've just come out of a cost of living crisis, or we're still in one, to be perfectly honest. We've had an energy crisis. We've also had COVID, which ate into a lot of people's savings and what have you. If you are now forced or faced with a very real prospect of having to go back to school to prove that you can do precisely what it is that you're already doing at your cost, that's an issue. Problem is now people don't want to do multiple jobs and they say, I'm only paid to do this. But has the industry not brought that upon itself? Going back to the point that Steve was saying, if you were employed by whatever company this was that Steve was working with, if you were employed as a brickie, but somebody says to you, I need hand with the drainage, you're employed. Your boss tells you, put down your trowel and your brick and your hod. You can tell how much I know about bricklaying. Put all that down and go and help the lads over on the drainage. We've got an issue, or we've got a deadline to hit, whatever it might be. And as an employed person, you're kind of expected to do that. Not dissimilar to, off the top of my head, if you're working in McDonald's and you've had a particularly busy shift, your job description says that you are the burger flipper, or you're the person that puts the nuggets into the box. However, you've had a busy shift and the place is looking a bit crap. You wouldn't be too upset if your boss said to you, run the broom round, would you? There's a load of mess out there. There's chips all over the floor. Pitch in and help. That's how employment works. The problem is, because we've got all these self-employed people all operating in their little silos, the temptation, I'm sure, is to say precisely that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not paid to do that. I'm paid to do this on your bike. Not my job. Not, as my daughter says, not my circus, not my monkeys. Problem, self-employed, you have to get your own cards on the books. Your company's paying for your cards. Indeed. Yes, industry has, for instance, a machine operator isn't allowed to get out and help if he's not insured, if you had an accident in the trench. Listen, I mean, I'm aware of the legal ramifications and the safety ramifications of all of this. And I'm not suggesting, for one moment that we say to the guy that's pushing the traffic marshal on the edge of a demolition site, I'll jump in the high ridge and take down that building, would you? Common sense should prevail, obviously. But if it is literally a case of all hands to the pumps, we all know how a demolition or more specifically a construction site works. If you've got a delivery of concrete arriving or whatever it might be, it is literally all hands to the pumps. Move this, move that, put that there, put that there. You're not actually involved in the concreting process yourself, but you are clearing the way and moving bits of plastic pipe out the way to allow that task to take place. We've created a scenario whereby it is very easy for self-employed people to say, no, not me. You've employed me as a ground worker. I don't do moving with plastic pipes. Not in my job description. No. Goes back to what I was saying at the end of that rant about all of the bureaucracy. Things like environmental regulations and stuff, we've had that imposed upon us. Could we have fought it a little bit harder? Maybe we could, maybe we couldn't, maybe we shouldn't. But so much of the bureaucracy and the red tape and the administrative burden within this industry we have brought upon ourselves entirely. Think about it from a training perspective only. Never mind all of the other stuff that we've talked about. Just think about it from a training point of view. If you had a team of 10 guys and you had a system whereby the only time your card was updated was either you changed address or you had achieved an additional skill level. So let's say you've got an excavator card, but you've now proven, as we were saying yesterday about yellow, green, and purple cards, you've now proven that in addition to being a good, competent excavator operator, you are also a good, competent, capable dozer operator. So your card is updated electronically because it's got a chip in it electronically. That should be the only time your card needs updating. Instead of which we have multiple cards with multiple levels, with multiple skill sets, multiple colors, multiple training organizations, multiple hoops to jump through. So rather than you as whether you're employed or self-employed, you have a piece of plastic that says, here's my skill level. It could also contain, here's my track record. You were found pissed at the wheel or the levers of the machine. So that's on there as well. But here's my card. It contains everything you could possibly need to know about me. If you gain an additional skill, it's updated. If you have something go against you, that's updated as well. But that card basically follows you for life. And aside from losing it or crushing it, whatever it might be, that is your card for life. If you've done that, we've done away with training organizations. We've done away with CITBs. We've done away with classroom training, constant updates, constant shifting of goalposts. Because even with the advent of simulated or remotely controlled via simulator, if you can drive an excavator, sat in an excavator, you can drive an excavator from a remote location because the controls are exactly the same. So there's no need to update it for that. You've proved that you're an excavator operator. You're good to go. And yet we have created a system where we can have one person with multiple cards, all of which expire at different times, all of which offer them different credential levels and capabilities and everything else. We have created that ourselves. And unfortunately, it's I think a lot of it has been imposed from on high. But think about that. Think about how short-sighted that is. Build UK are very, very keen on every once in a while. Oh, yes, we must have an NVQ to back this. They're paying for that. They may not realise it, but they're paying for that. Because if you've got to get your entire workforce back to school to get an NVQ to prove they can do the very thing that they're already doing, somebody's going to have to bear that cost. Many self-employed trainers, assessors, and general tradesmen do not hold any professional indemnity. There's another point. Going back to the point that Steve was making and Dan Cullen was making, if you've got a lot of employed people, they're all covered under one insurance policy, one indemnity, public liability and everything else. If you employ somebody off the street and they decide to back their excavator through next door shop window, yes, your insurance will cover it, but what about theirs? Are they insured? Have you checked? Our friend Wolfie says, is dodgeball an Olympic sport? I don't believe it is. I also think that's another one of those sports that the Americans would win every single time. The folk that say it's not my job want sacking, says Jim Turner. Unless they're outstanding at their job, you can keep them doing that 100% of the time. When did that become a thing as well? When did that become a thing? And I don't want to come across now as the old fuddy-duddy or, when I were a lad, lick road, clean whip tongue and all that. I don't want to come across as that guy. But when I started work, on my first proper job was working in the accounts department of a contract furnishing company. If my boss had come to me and said, we're flat out making the furniture, any chance you could run a broom round? I may not have liked it, but I'd have grabbed the broom and I'd have done precisely as I was told, because that was the relationship that we had. He was the boss. I was merely an employee. Again, I can sense myself going down the old fart route here. But do you remember when you were at school? When you were at school and your teacher told you what to do? And some of my teachers, I don't know about yours, but some of my teachers would clip you around the ear. I got caned a couple of times. I got hit with a slipper a couple of times. I had bald rubbers thrown at me on a number of occasions. I didn't think to sue them. I didn't think to fight back, because they were in charge and I was a kid. I was having a conker fight with a bunch of friends once, and I threw a conker across a road, and a car went by and it hit its windscreen. Didn't do any damage, but the guy that was driving the car got out and clipped me around the ear. I didn't think to sue him because I was in the wrong, and that's. I think we've lost a lot of that. I mean, even my kids, and most of my kids have got a pretty good work ethic, but the number of times they come, oh, my boss asked me to do so and so, and that's your. It might not be your job formally, but surely you want to help out. Is that not what you do? And why is it like that in the commercial world and not socially? If it's the weekend, right? You pop round your friend's house. They're having a bit of a barbecue, right? And the guy that owns the house is coming out of his garage with a bench and some chairs that hasn't seen the light of day since last summer. Do you stand there and say, or let him struggle, let him drag it on his own, or do you go over and say, oh, I'll grab this end? It's not your job. You're not being paid for it. It's not your job description. At no point did you agree when you went round your friend's house that you were going to carry benches. Is that not just the decent thing to do? Dan Cullen says, like many telehandler operators, they get asked to get out, do some labour when not busy, and those that refuse due to ramifications of impact of not insured, you get sacked for not getting out. Known a few people this has happened to. It's ridiculous. And where is the fault there? Where is have we defined jobs to such a degree now that it's not a case of you don't want to help, you legally can't? Is that what we've created for ourselves? And as I say, we have created an awful lot of crap bloody rules and regulations for ourselves. Is that another one? Are we so intent on following every letter of the law that even though the guys on the ground are struggling, we can't ask the guy who sat there twiddling his thumbs in the telehandler to get out and help move a bit of pipe or whatever it might be? Is that what we've created for ourselves? Mick Norton says, Dan, terms and conditions of work can rule out many of these problems. Yeah. And I wonder what those terms and conditions, have those terms and conditions been updated to reflect the more modern approach to all of this? Are we employing people to drive telehandlers that basically says that, their job description is you drive a telehandler, under no circumstances whatsoever are you to leave the cab and get involved in any other form of construction activity? Is that what we're doing? Because if that's what we're doing, we're mental. All of this could be on a person's ID card. It can chart the history, both professional and personal, depending on the clearance level the person reading it has. If everyone's DNA was on file, then we would know who everyone really is. There'd be no CPCS, CSCS card fraud. Yeah. Listen, we've all got one. These things are... That's the thing that I find bizarre about this, and I realise we're going off at a slight tangent here. But you have people. I would never under any circumstances would I allow. Would I carry an ID card? People tracking me and watching my every activity. We live in a nation with more CCTV cameras than anywhere else in the world, and that tracks everything. Everything you look at online, every financial transaction you make, every social interaction you make is being tracked already. A piece of plastic does not change that. If anything, it just organizes it a bit better. Andy Hare, at 1 hour 27 minutes into the show, rocking up at the end. Morning, all. Andy, things have changed somewhat since the last time you were here. These shows now have no discernible end in sight. They just go until I run out of breath, basically. Mick Norton says, if a trainee or novice under instruction slips and breaks a limb getting on or off a dozer, it opens a litigation route where they can claim negligence by the trainer instructor in his failing to provide a duty of care. And therein lies a whole other can of worms. I don't get on machines very often, and I rarely do it on site because, rules and regulations and stuff. But I do it at exhibitions. Okay, so to give you an example, and you're all aware, because obviously I'm incredibly stupid. At Hillhead, I climbed up on the 97-ton HX1000 from Hyundai. Now, they put a staircase in place, so I didn't have any trouble getting up or down. None of that. On the way into the cab, I clouted my head. Now, to be absolutely clear, I was being filmed. I was wearing a microphone and I was talking to the microphone. So the reason I clouted my head was not the design of a Hyundai cab. It was my own stupidity. Okay. Nobody in their right mind needs to be talking to a microphone while getting into an excavator. But I did it. It hurt. It bled. But at no point did I think to myself, I am going to sue the organisers of the exhibition and I'm going to sue Hyundai for having damaged my skull. And yet we live in a world where, had that happened on site, there is every possibility that would have been somebody's first thought. I've hit my head. That is negligence. Somebody, the manufacturer or the site supervisor or the construction company or the demolition company has failed in their duty of care to stop me hitting my head. That, again, is another system that we have created for ourselves. And we've allowed it to happen. This is one of the reasons that we've gone the American way. We are now a nation of ambulance chasing solicitors. No win, no fee basis. Outside my house, my house is probably 80, 90 years old, I guess. And there's a line of trees heading down off to the shops near where I live. And I'm sure when they first put the trees in, nobody really gave any great thought to, the way that the trees would grow. But the trees have grown, and they've grown quite substantially. And as a result, the roots have gradually popped up. So the road down from here, the road itself, the road's just been resurfaced. The road is like a baby's bottom, smooth as silk. But the path, it's like that. It undulates, and there are roots sticking out. There's bits of paving slab that stick up. Trip hazards all over the place. Now, for one thing, I'm aware of it, but for another thing, if I were to walk out of here, which I intend to do at some point today, if I walk out of here and I trip over, I am not suing Epsom Council. I'm not suing the people that laid the path 50, 60 years ago. I'm dusting myself up and carrying on and going to grab a cup of coffee. And yeah, that's not the way today, is it? Excuse me. Mick Norton says terms and conditions of work are more often as not poorly constructed. I have no sympathy for these employers. No, indeed. And one of the things that I heard, let me just share this because I think this is an important as an aside. Chris Ford says, morning, Mr. Hare. Andy, pay attention. Better late than never. Need a price for a manual pulverizer to fit a 20-ton machine. 80 millimeter pins, please. Andy Hare, Chris Ford, Andy Hare. So yes, going back to this, terms and conditions. One of the things, when I first started writing about all things related to drugs and alcohol on site, is I would have thought, and frankly, if I employed people, this would be my approach. If you are found to be operating heavy machinery under the influence of alcohol or drugs, I would like to think that my best recourse would be to fire you, because you are behind the wheels or the levers of a machine that could potentially kill you, your colleagues, me, pedestrians close by. You are a danger. Get off my site. Do not ever darken my doorstep again. And yet, the legal ramifications say, unless that course of action is written into your terms and conditions of employment, your employer should actually get you some rehab, get you some medical attention, get you maybe some psychiatric help. The balance, and bearing in mind, I am the working man. I am pro working man. But if you've gone to work on a construction site or a demolition site, off your tits or pissed, and you have put other people in danger, never mind your rehab, never mind the circumstances that went behind it. How is that any different to somebody turning up with, in a rage? You've had a major falling out with the missus before you've left for work. You've turned up on site and somebody said the wrong thing, or they've looked at you in the wrong way, and you've run amok and you've clouted a car and you've knocked down part of a building and you've hit a pedestrian. Arrested, fired. Simple as. And yet you do that under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and apparently the sensible and required approach is, arm round the shoulder. Never mind, we'll help you through this. Really? Exactly, Jim Turner. It'd be possible to do it on phone as well, credit card and smartwatch, all trackable. I was going to say I'd be happy to be tracked wherever I went, but I already am. And even to the point, and I don't know whether this is a boast or a warning. My phone and my Apple Watch are not just linked to me; they're linked to my family as well. So, I've never had the conversation with my wife, where have you been to this hour? Because she knows where I am. She just goes online. Oh, he's still there, is he? It's not like I've popped in for a quickie with somebody on the way home. She knows exactly. That's not a problem for me. It's not a problem for me because I'm not playing away from home. I'm not doing something I shouldn't be doing. Dan Collins says, like on most 8-ton machines, entry and exits are very bad. They may well be, but you're not suing the manufacturer, are you? And in absolute truth, I mean, I think part of mine was caused by the fact that I wasn't paying full attention because I was talking to a microphone. But I think also I'm not in and out of machines all day, every day. If you are on an 8-ton machine, as Dan has just described there, and you're in it 5 days a week, 6 days a week for 6 months, after you've clouted your head once, you're probably not doing that again. The following morning, you'll duck a bit, won't you? Because that's human sense. They always said it won't hurt when the pain's gone. No sense, no feeling. That's definitely me. Do you know the bizarre? And I may have said this before. I was wearing a baseball cap while I was doing the filming, hit my head, and actually took my hat off because I was convinced I'd cut my head open. There was nothing there. Carried on. Did the full day, finished the show, went back to the hotel, took my hat off. Blood in my hat, blood in my hair. Yes, I'm a slow bleeder, apparently. In a court of law in the Anthony versus Hyundai, where you banged your head, he would have appointed blame proportionately between you and the organisers. Would they? And how much of a dick would I look then? I hit my head and I'm blaming someone else. Yeah. Dan Cullen says, like the job I'm on, had to get Excavator to clean around roots and pipes as well as was safer and multiple roots and huge root. That machine saves us at least a weekend of hard labor and no damage to services. Indeed. Everybody, I think we may have I think we may have resolved the fact that I'm not going to sue Hyundai or Hillhead or anybody else beginning with H, because I am so stupid I hit my head on Excavator. I think we may have secured an order for Andy Hare from Crisfield. I don't know. That's for them to negotiate. And I think we've took that all out for plenty. I am just going to very quickly share one last thing because I'm here and because it's current. Let's have a look. Just wanted to show you what landed on my desk this morning. Keltbray apparently is to sell off its infrastructure business to concentrate on its building arm. The division is being bought by private equity and we're based in central London. Keltbray is set to be broken up, with the firm selling its near £400 million turnover infrastructure business to concentrate on building work. Blah-de, blah-de, blah, blah-de, blah-de, blah. The infrastructure business is Keltbray's biggest arm, and employs just over 1,100 people. Had an order book at the end of last year of 710 million. Keltbray have apparently declined to comment. And it all goes into, in the last set of results, Keltbray, which was set up in 1976, posted a record turnover of £689 million, a rise of 30% on last time. Pre-tax profit fell from 3.4 million to a £1.2 million loss, which the firm said was down to the cost of refinancing deal and legal fees associated with its appeal against the £16 million fine imposed by the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, for its involvement in demolitions bid rigging scandal. The infrastructure business is unaffected by the CMA inquiry. So you are now fully up to speed. There's a lump of Keltbray that is going under the hammer, although by the sound of it, the deal has already been done. So now you know. Dan Cullen says, have a fantastic weekend, guys. Stay safe. Looking to go to look at another job at the weekend. Good luck with that. Take care. See you on Monday. Yes, you will see me on Monday. Assuming there is no cataclysms between now and then, assuming that I don't go and clout my head on something else and knock myself cold, I'll be back here on Monday with more of the same. Thank you for your company. Thank you for all your input. This new bit of the show is going really rather well, isn't it? Quite like it. Don't know if I can keep it rolling because I don't know quite how the news is going to affect us, but we shall see. Mick Norton says, had you slipped on a grease patch on the Hyundai footplate and broke a limb, incapacitating you for employment for, say, 6 months, how would you have reacted? Probably the same way. I mean, I do think one of the things that we've lost, I mean, never mind all the rules and regulations and arbitrations and everything else, one of the things that we've lost as a society as a whole is an ability to take personal responsibility. And yes, there might have been a grease patch on the Hyundai footplate, but I've got eyes. And really and truly, you know, you could ask the question, and I would certainly ask the question in my own head. Should I be climbing up on machines? Really? I'm only there to film them. Does it really make my life better? Does it make the video better if I'm sat in the cab for part of it? Probably not. It's my own stupid fault, would be my take on that, I think. Well, I can't guarantee that, but sat here, cold light of day, that's what I'm thinking. Gary Muirhead says, God willing, see you all Monday. Yes, God willing, see you all on Monday, unless there's some really good athletics on first thing on Monday morning, in which case I may just have a lie in and watch that instead. I won't be watching that. I'll watch it and catch up instead. Everybody, go and have a fantastic weekend. Really appreciate your input. Really appreciate your presence and your participation. I'll see you all again on Monday. Till then, everybody, have a good day. Have a good weekend. Have a good life. Have a good drink. Have a good dinner. Just have good. See you soon.